What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Hoop Symmetry, where we discuss the game of basketball in detail in hopes of further pushing the balance surrounding the game of basketball. Today, we're talking about none other than Jonathan Kuminga. So, according to Bleacher Report and Anthony Slater of The Athletic, it states that the Golden State Warriors are not currently prepared to offer Jonathan Kuminga a max contract extension worth $224 million. Over 5 years, or any deal that even approaches that figure. And this has been controversial. They cited Franz Wagner's extension. Those two players were also in the same draft class. So very interesting news there. So I wanted to take this approach and talk about the situation in two different video forms, because first I just want to talk about that news and what I think about that and the state of the Golden State Warriors and what I think they should do. And then the second video I want to make about Jonathan Kuminga, specifically and how it ties into coaches and opportunity in the NBA and how this situation can kind of shape your career. For this video, we're just going to talk about Jonathan Kuminga and his role and future with the Golden State Warriors and what I believe organizationally the team should do given their current stand. Give a couple of disclaimers. I am a Warriors supporter. Stephen Curry is actually my favorite player in the entire NBA. I don't really like the word fan because I don't really get into the fandom part of things like a lot of other people. I don't really have a lot of teams that I really don't like and do like because this is their rival. I just really like the way the Warriors play basketball, and I'm a huge fan of the way Stephen Curry plays basketball. He's my favorite player. And within that team, Jonathan Kuminga has been one of my favorite players even before his time in the Golden State Warriors. Stand out in high school, and he really caught my eye when he was playing for the G League Ignite. I remember there was this one game where I was really tuned in because I was watching for Jalen Green, I believe. Jalen Green was the player I was focused on, but other guy kept popping out on the screen. I remember he had like this full court bounce pass that he threw, and just the way he was moving, kind of his understanding and his freakish athleticism just like jumped out the screen to me. I was like, who is that? And I was like, oh, that's Kuminga from high school. And Jonathan Kuminga came into the league. He's had a bunch of different really good draft picks, drafted to a really good team due to injuries when they had that down year where Steph broke his hand and things like that when they were slowly recovering. Good for them. That's like the best position you can be in. That's how you get these super talented people on super good teams. Sometimes it's hard to carve out a niche for yourself when guys are already rolling and you don't get to establish the talent that you have. You have to kind of fit into a mold, which is typically what older players are asked to do. They don't have anything to prove anymore. When you're young, you have everything to prove. That's what you're trying to do. But in a winning concept, the team is not out for you to prove things. They're out to win games. He started off not really receiving consistent minutes, benched in that finals run, which a lot of Warriors fans, including myself, very disappointed in because he was one of their best players throughout the entire year. He kind of turned their year around a lot of different ways, both at the point of attack defensively and as an offensive initiator offensively, because outside of Stephen Curry, the Warriors weren't really playing many guys who can create their own shot. Andrew Wiggins gave you a little bit of that, but Jonathan Kuminga gave you different level of downhill athletic specimen that just requires so much attention, created a different dynamic, especially when you take Steph off the ball. Because, you know, when Draymond has the ball and Steph's off the ball, it's more so Draymond's playing more point guard, a facilitating point guard looking for Steph to run off of things and get Steph open. But a lot of times it's very advantageous to have another guy who can just break people off the dribble and get, defenses to focus on them instead of just focusing on Stephen Curry. Jordan Poole also flourished in that type of role because he was another guy who can create offensive advantage for the team without everyone having to focus on Steph. So Jonathan Kuminga slowly began to increase his role, getting more playing time. After that, I feel like Steve Kerr was bullied by social media to basically start him, and it looked great. He was averaging 20 for a long stretch of games. And then Jonathan Kuminga had a really good year last year. He was averaging 16, 5, and 2 on good shooting splits too. 53% from the field, 32% from three. Over his career, he's about a 34% three-point shooter, which is not that bad. It's a little under league average. He has room to improve with that. He shot it really well last year. Also 75% from the free throw line last year. And free throw percentage typically is a good indicator of someone having a decent shot. Of course, right now, he's not a knockdown, deadly three-point shooter by any stretch of the imagination, but he, to me, is a much more than capable three-point shooter in the NBA. Average half a steal a game, a little over half a block a game, and is an amazing defensive player, very versatile. However, the Warriors are kind of stuck in this kind of issue because Jonathan Kuminga's development should be paramount for any type of rebuild or future that the Warriors are planning. The Warriors aren't really planning a future or rebuild right now because they still have Stephen Curry. in his prime, and Steve Kerr and that whole crew, even though they just got rid of Clay, they still have most of the crew, and they're still trying to compete for a championship. And whether I agree or disagree on Jonathan Kuminga's role within the team or what it should be, the reality is Steve Kerr is not interested in playing Jonathan Kuminga in the way that many fans want him to play him. They're not changing the coach. So given that they're not changing the coach, you kind of have to make a decision. You look at the way that the team is structured right now. At the point guard position, they have Steph going to be the starting point guard, of course. They have GP2 coming off the bench. Przemski was going to play a little bit of point guard, kind of a combo guard. Two guard, they just brought in Buddy Hield. They got Anthony Melton. One of those guys may start, or they might start Przemski like they did a lot last year. They have Lester Quinones, who was looking really good in the offseason, and he may get some spot minutes here and there at that spot. Wiggins is still there. Moody may have a role this year, offering them more shooting. And Kyle Anderson they just brought in. Got Draymond, that 4 spot with Kyle Anderson. And at that 5 spot, which is definitely their weakest spot, but they still got Trace Jackson Davis, young promising player, Kevon Looney, who's still there. They drafted Quentin Post this year. The team is kind of set up in a way where there's not too much shooting around Steph from those forward spots. Even though Draymond shot the hell out of the ball last year too, it was very underrated. Draymond had a very underrated season on both ends of the ball last year to me when he was playing. Of course, he had all that controversy and all the craziness going on, which to me was kind of a disservice to how he played, because he played fantastic last year. He shot about 40% from 3. He had an amazing defensive season. Like, I was watching him, he looked like prime Draymond, covering the post, covering the perimeter, being everyone on the court. He looked great. He looked way more aggressive scoring the ball when he was able to play, but keeping him on the court and keeping his head level is the main issue there. But regardless of that, Draymond's still not going to garner the amount of respect from defenses from the 3 that is needed to create. It kind of creates clunky because you're going to play Wiggins for the defensive reasons as well. And you're going to play Steph, and at that 2 spot, you're going to play somebody, and you're going to play Draymond and a big. Even though, I'm a big fan of Kuminga. Kuminga is one of my favorite young players in the entire NBA. I think he's amazing. I think he can be an all NBA level player. I think Kuminga's like a taller, more athletic version of Jaylen Brown if he was able to kind of rock out and do his thing. I think if you gave Kuminga the ball, I think he has much more offensive creation off the dribble than he's really been able to show. And he has a lot of things to his game he's not able to really exploit because he plays within the confines of the Warriors' motion Princeton style offense. The Warriors have to decide whether or not they're better or apart from Kuminga. You kind of have to take your emotions out of it. I know, again, I'm a Warriors fan to a degree, so none of us want to see Kuminga go because we love Kuminga. Kuminga's an amazing young player. And at the same time, most of Warriors fans are also really frustrated with Steve Kerr for a multitude of reasons. So since Steve Kerr is not going anywhere, and I don't think Steve Kerr is changing his mind or philosophy on the way he wants to play basketball. And that way he wants to play basketball is not the most conducive for Jonathan Kuminga's style of game. Not just for the Warriors, but also for Jonathan Kuminga. If I'm Jonathan Kuminga, I see these guys getting all this money, and I'm thinking I'm better than these guys. I'm just not able to show that I'm better than these guys because when I catch it at the wing, my coach is telling me to dribble into a dribble handoff and hand the ball to Steph and then just roll. I can't really get it and jab and do the things that I'm capable of doing, or catch it on the elbow in the mid post, and can't do that within the confines of this offense. I'm not allowed to. At this point in time, it seems like the writing's on the wall that the Warriors and Kuminga are kind of going to be better apart than together, which brings me to my idea. And so I personally believe it's some deal with Portland. I don't know. It hasn't really been reported that I've seen. I'm not getting this off of a report. To me, that just what makes sense for the league. Like, when I look at the league, I look at the landscape, I look at teams that should be buying, should be selling, where a team could fit, what team has an asset that they may be trying to get rid of that another team may value. And to me, these two teams seem like they should be in some type of trade marriage, because the Portland Trailblazers just drafted Donovan Clingan with a lottery pick, and they're really high on Donovan Clingan. And they got Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe there. They just traded for Denny Avdia, so they're going in this full rebuild mode. With that being said, Aiden seems to be the odd man out. You're not going to play him and Clingan together. And they also have Jeremy Grant, who's a little bit older, kind of more a win-ready player than a rebuilding guy. And both of those guys, both Ayton and Grant, would also really, really help Golden State. When you look at Ayton gets a lot of scrutiny, but Ayton is still a very good big in the league, and the weakest position on the Warriors right now is by far the center position. If they were able to get DeAndre Ayton, to me, that would make them way more competent next year than it would be if they started Trace Jackson Davis and kept Jonathan Kuminga. And same thing with Jeremy Grant. This year, Kuminga may be better than Grant, but not at the things that Kerr is going to want them to do. Like, Grant's still going to be a better shooter than Kuminga, just because of the reps and things like that. He's more experienced and he just knows what to do. Like, he doesn't make as many mistakes on defense, and he's still a great defender. So I think either of those guys, Kuminga could be their best player. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or at least their second best player, depending on what you think of Scoot and Shaedon, who I really like Shaedon. But if you can go with Scoot and Shaedon and Danny Avdia and Kuminga and Donovan Clingan, well, now you have a young core who's really competent, and you still have Anthony Simons if you want him to be the leader right now. Like, you know, you can go Scoot, Anthony, Shaedon, Kuminga, Clingan, and now, again, it's still a very, very good young core. So to me, I think those teams are on a kind of a collision course to make some type of deal happen. Again, I haven't seen this reported. It just makes sense. The salaries seem like they could line up. Maybe it's a sign and trade type of situation. That's what I'll be on the lookout for. That is my reaction to the news. That just kind of made me solidify the position I've kind of started settle in my brain about. I first thought about it with the Lauri Markkanen situation. I was like, okay, well, if it's Lauri Markkanen, for sure you could trade Kuminga. Even if it's not Lauri Markkanen, it's just better for both parties. And I do also want to see Kuminga shine because I think so highly of him, and I kind of don't want to feel selfishly as a fan that because I want him on my team, I want to see the best for Kuminga. And I think the best for Kuminga at this point may be elsewhere than in Golden State. But that's all I have for that take. Again, that was my opinion on the Kuminga news. This is Akil with Hoop Symmetry, and I am out.